Guys, welcome into the Fantasy Slant, which is powered by Pro Football Focus and brought to you by DraftKings.com. I am your host, Mike Tagliere. Alongside of me, I have my co-host, Kevin Cole. Kevin and I have been here with you every single week discussing fantasy-relevant matchups, maybe not the most obvious plays, but the ones that you may be teetering on. And we're now at the point in the season heading into Week 13 where it's make or break time. I know there's a lot of fantasy teams that are going into, they need to win or they go home or they're fighting for a first round bye, whatever the case may be. So we're going to be here to discuss those tougher situations that you may be, the decisions you may be facing this week. Kevin, any big takeaways from week 12 and maybe some of the injuries like Chris Johnson, Andre Ellington, what this means for David Johnson? Any big takeaways?
Yeah, I think David Johnson's another one of these guys. I talked about Thomas Rawls before in that people were maybe discounting him a little bit too much when Marshawn Lynch was out because he was going to step in and he was going to be the man. He wasn't going to be sharing carries with a lot of guys in a favorable system. I think it's probably an analogous situation with David Johnson. There's a little bit more uncertainty there. I mean, we had seen with Rawls when Lynch was out before that he was used as a true feature back. Bruce Arians, I wish I could trust him. But he seems to he's kind of like this curmudgeon-y old guy who just, decided to use Chris Johnson. Chris Johnson's been effective, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's really been that great. He had a couple of long runs, that one that was kind of questionable where he rolled over on the Ravens and they kept on going. But he hasn't been that great. In my opinion, they probably should have had David Johnson involved much more. So we'll have to see what ends up happening. Who knows? He could mix in, Stephen Taylor, or they brought up the Kerwin Williams. He was pretty good last year. So who knows what's going to end up happening. But if they truly give him the ball, I don't see why the guy can't be, almost a top 5 option going forward, especially in PPR leagues because they throw the ball to the running back so much.
Well, yeah, the craziest thing for me is that I was holding on to him in a few leagues, and then I ended up dropping him because I'm like, you know what? Even if Chris Johnson were to go down, Andre Ellington's going to take the keys, and Johnson will be, that Andre Ellington then of the offense.
Right.
I was like, so it's going to take 2 injuries. So I cut him actually like 2 weeks ago, and well, I'm kicking myself for it.
Well, I cut him long before that, and I was actually, disputing people who were saying that he was a good handcuff. I was like, what are you, crazy? Like, he's third on the depth chart. I mean, the only place that I own him is in Dynasty, and I do own him in Dynasty because I liked him a lot. So even someone who liked him a lot, I think it was probably the smart move to actually cut him a few weeks ago, but sometimes it's the way things happen, and Andre Ellington is pretty fragile, so who knew? He would basically have 2 carries and then turf toe would pop up.
Yeah, needless to say, I spent all of my fab on D'Angelo Williams 1 week and then Spencer Ware last week. I have no free agent acquisition budget in any of my leagues, so needless to say, I didn't get him in any leagues. But Chris Johnson, actually, I just pulled it up. He was graded as the worst running back with our grading system of running backs that have played 25% of the snaps.
No, I don't doubt it at all. I mean, you watched him play. I don't really understand Arians, quite honestly, because I remember 2 years ago, they had Mendenhall and they had Ellington. Ellington was a pretty electric rookie. He wasn't, suffering too bad. He had a couple of minor dings, but they were giving the ball to Mendenhall way too much. Last year, Ellington was obviously hampered, but they were still riding him like crazy where they could have mixed some other guys in, but they didn't have a lot of great options. And this year, I think it's a similar situation. I think he just likes going with a known quantity and a veteran rather than someone who could produce a little bit more. And in my opinion, David Johnson, he's more athletic, he's bigger, he can catch the ball. I don't know what he can't do that Chris Johnson could. It's not like Chris Johnson's picking up the blitz with any great degree of aptitude. So I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, no, well, we're going to talk about that game. We're going to talk about David Johnson. We're going to get into that because we're going to touch on every game. That starts with the game Thursday night tonight. Packers at the Lions. This is a rematch of a game that took place 3 weeks ago. One where Aaron Rodgers should have blown up. He didn't. Ever since then, the Lions, their defense and their offense, for that matter, have been taking off. Yeah. I don't know how Detroit fans feel about it, considering they were in line for a great draft pick, and now they're slowly creeping back into this somewhat of a playoff race in the NFC, which is just madness. What are your thoughts on this game? I know that Randall Cobb has been a disappointment. I finally downgraded him into that wide receiver 20 range. I just can't put him inside my top 12 anymore with the way he's been performing. He's been awful. But James Jones, he's the one who I want to talk about, because last time they played the Lions, he offered nothing. He scored 0 points. He's actually scored 0 in 2 of his last 3 games. But with the way Devontae Adams has been playing or not been playing, what do you think about James Jones this week?
I think he's an okay start, but you're going to have to tolerate 0. Now, you talked earlier about this being a make or break week for some teams, so I could see him as being a good high variance guy to put in there if you need to not only win this week, but you need to, let's say, accumulate a certain number of points for a tiebreaker or a situation like that, he's probably a good guy to put in. But if you look back quite a few weeks, he really hasn't done much other than his big game win. Was it 2 weeks ago? I guess he had a pretty big game. And Devontae Adams, I mean, I don't know what to say about Adams. He was pretty bad last year. He's worse this year, but he's getting targeted. So as long as he's getting targeted, I don't necessarily see Aaron Rodgers peppering James Jones with targets, because perhaps Devontae Adams, with his youth, is able to get open a little bit more. He's just not able to do anything with the ball. I'm hoping for a turnaround for Randall Cobb. I mean, I don't know what to really do with him, because most of the time, if you have him on your roster, you spent a first pick in the first, at least the first 3 rounds, if not the first 2 rounds, on Randall Cobb. So who are you going to bench him for? I mean, you're going to bench him for guys who are just
Brandon LaFell, maybe Brandon LaFell. I guess that's a good
yeah. I mean, that's really your choice. So what you're doing is you're giving up that upside, because Cobb had that 3-touchdown game earlier this year. He can get some cheap touchdowns near the end zone. He's another high variance type of play, in my opinion.
I agree. And James Jones, I actually like the way you put that, though. If you have a tiebreaker and you're looking for points, I think he's a high upside guy. I actually have James Jones as a high-end wide receiver 3 this week, just because I believe if you break down the numbers, if the Packers really, really want to look at it and say, okay, where are we succeeding and where are we failing? They're succeeding when they throw the ball to James Jones. I mean, the thing is, I was a Devontae Adams fan coming into the year. He's been a letdown for me. Believe me, I know he was bad last year. I know he's been worse this year, but I'm not completely giving up on the guy in Dynasty. I actually think he's a good buy low. I stand by that. But James Jones needs to get the ball. I don't really care. Devontae Adams should be benched right now. He should, with the way he's been playing. I know they're talking about his ankle, but James Jones needs to be targeted. And I think that the Packers realize it's like, this is no more time to force the issue with Devontae Adams. It's like, we need to win football games, and we're playing on the road. I think that James Jones is a fine play this week. I would probably, I don't know. I wouldn't play him. I don't think I could play him over Randall Cobb, but I wouldn't think it's out of the ordinary for someone to debate that. But I don't want to spend too much time on that game because we have a whole slate of games here to go through. The Texans at the Bills. The Texans have been playing really, really, really good as of late, defensively specifically. And a lot of people wondered what happened with, DeAndre Hopkins last week. I can't tell you how many messages I got on Twitter asking me what happened with DeAndre Hopkins. And I'm like, well, that's just something. There's some things that you cannot predict. And that's one of them. But this week he gets a tougher matchup with Stephon Gilmore. But we know that Hopkins performs. But on the other side, the Bills, Sammy Watkins. What the heck did the Bills do? 158 yards, 2 touchdowns in the first half, right?
Yeah.
And then in the second half, they targeted him 1 time. Mm-hmm. What are they doing?
Yeah, that's kind of been typical, though. We've seen some games where he's barely had any targets, and we've seen some where he's had a lot. Tyrod Taylor is not he's risk averse as a quarterback. And what was interesting about the game, I didn't watch the second half of the game, so I didn't see Sammy Watkins completely disappear. But I did watch the first half of the game, and he was throwing it up to Sammy Watkins a lot. Beyond the balls that he was catching, he was also having some contested balls where he probably should have made more catches, but the conditions were pretty poor there. But he was doing a good job making sure that the cornerback did not have any play on the ball. So hopefully they'll continue to do that and give him some chances to make plays, because especially on the second touchdown, they basically just threw it up there and he just went and got it. So Tyrod Taylor is going to have to do that a little bit more often rather than, dump it off to Charles Clay, or he's been throwing it to Sean McCoy a lot. He's just throwing it underneath a lot when they are doing it. And of course they love to run the ball. So I think you need a couple different things to happen. You need the score to at least be close, or for them to be trailing for Sammy Watkins to be effective, as he disappeared in the second half when they got a lead. And you need Tyrod Taylor to take some risks. So Sammy Watkins is another high variance play.
Well, I took a few notes basically on the Texans defense and what I felt about them. And I know they've been good, but looking at their home and away splits, okay, while at home, they've allowed 15 points per game. On the road, they're averaging about 28.5. Since back in week 4, every single starting running back not named Toby Gerhart has averaged at least 4 yards per carry against them. Okay, McCoy is pretty much a lock for 20 carries. Mm-hmm. He's going to catch passes out of the backfield. I think McCoy is an elite play this week, and I don't think that's going out on a limb or anything with the way he's been playing. But I think that the Texans' defense is a little. They need to come back down to earth, because we know what they are. It's not like they weren't as bad as they were, but they're not as good as they've been playing. I just think on the road in Buffalo, I think that the Bills score more points than most people would think. So I like Sammy Watkins. Obviously, he's a high upside, low floor guy. But ever since he's said, I want more touches, they've pretty much done it in every game except for that New England game. and
Yeah.
I don't really know what happened in that game.
Yeah. No, I agree.
But moving on, the Ravens at the Dolphins. The Dolphins fired another guy, Bill Lazor, this week, and I think it's going to lead to a thing where, Kevin, I know it happened earlier in the season, and you did an article on it about, is Lamar Miller, has the coaching really changed what they do there? And the answer was no. It was really all game script dependent. And a lot of people have been asking me, do I start Lamar Miller against the Ravens, considering how many touches he has not gotten? And I'm in the mindset of yes. I think Lamar Miller is actually a top 10 running back this week. Now, I know that the Ravens have only allowed 100 yards in one game this season to running backs on the opposing team, but I think this is a game where he's guaranteed. I mean, I think that they're going to run the ball. I think they can. There's no way that the Ravens put up points, is there?
No, I don't think so. I mean, yeah, they're favorite, so that helps a lot. And, it's interesting because I did write that article about how even underneath Dan Campbell, where they had the same offensive coordinators they did under Joe Philbin, that they weren't necessarily – the most important point for Lamar Miller having a couple big games is the fact that they blew out Tennessee and they blew out Houston. But I will say, though, that it is a bit more than just game script, because the Miami Dolphins, Lazor, and he's kind of fallen back into that, especially when they're behind, just completely abandoning the run. Because I was looking at what they did last week from a game script perspective. So obviously they were down, right? But still, if you look at how much they should have been passing the ball versus how much they were, it was pretty far off. I mean, their game script predicted, if you look at kind of the average of what teams have done this year, predicted they should have been passing 68% of the time, which is really high because they were losing a lot. But they actually passed 87% of the time, so almost 20% more than you suspect. And that seems to be a very common theme, is when they're down that they just completely abandon the run. So that might not happen. So there is some hope on the coaching front for Lamar Miller, and there's definitely a lot of hope on the front that they should be winning this game.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, is like the Ravens now. Last week, it's hard for me to justify, to say that it may have been game script, because I think the game plan was to throw against the Jets without Darrelle Revis. I mean, the Jets can stop the run. We know that. They're pretty good up front. But against the pass, they're very bad if they don't have Darrelle Revis on the field, and it showed. And they weren't necessarily not successful in the passing game last week. Jarvis Landry had a great game. Devontae Parker, if he gets big boy snaps, he could be that late season league winner if he plays all the snaps. Like Rashard Matthews was putting up wide receiver 3 numbers, and he's not. Let's just face it, he's not the most talented guy. Right. I think Devontae Parker could be a league winner for some teams that were willing to take a chance on him. I don't know. I mean, against the Ravens, I guess if you're going to start him, you're going to start him, and I would expect him to succeed if Rashard Matthews is out of the game. And from what I'm hearing, I think Rashard Matthews is out. Is he not?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's out. I mean, league winner might be a little bit of an overstatement. He might, give you that incremental. If you're desperate at wide receiver, he's going to give you a startable option. I'll say that. But I don't expect him to be, for him to go in there and just, Odell Beckham style blow up the last few games of the season. But he can definitely help your team out if you're in need in that position.
Fair enough. Maybe I went a little over the top there. That's fair enough. But like what I'm thinking from Devontae Parker, if he plays, actual snaps, 80% of the snaps, something like that against the Ravens, I can see him as wide receiver 2 material. I'm not gonna play him as such, I don't think, but I think that the upside's definitely there.
Right. But I'd say it's capped somewhat just because Landry sucks up so many targets.
He does. He's that. And I don't even want to talk about Jordan Cameron. He upsets me.
I was looking at his stats today because I was trying to find a guy. I have Gronk in a bunch of leagues. So I was like, oh, Jordan Cameron's available.
No, stay away.
I looked at him. I was like, holy Lord. I can't believe I knew he was bad the first half of the season, but what's going on?
I don't even want to talk about Jordan Cameron.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I've lived there. But moving off that game, I think we know what's kind of going to play out in that game. Moving into the Bengals and the Browns. Last week, Jeremy Hill looked like, the Jeremy Hill of 2014.
Yeah.
Gio Bernard looked like the Gio Bernard of 2014, catching passes, what he does best. And I think he had 6 carries for 10 yards or something like that. But he's been struggling as of late. Now, what do you think about them going to the Browns? Now, I know that the Browns are a division opponent. AJ Green typically is very, very, very bad against them. I posted something on Twitter. The last 7 games against them, he has not topped 53 yards. So do you think that this is a game where the Bengals say, you know what, Tyler Eifert is banged up if he even plays at all, AJ Green doesn't do well. Is this a Jeremy Hill day?
Yeah, I think the Cleveland run defense is awful. They'll be up by a lot. They should do well. I think AJ Green can play okay. I don't think AJ Green is going to be necessarily what he has done in the past. I mean, he's gonna with Eifert out. I think that's a huge deal for red zone targets. I mean, Eifert's your league leader, I believe, in receiving touchdowns, whether it be for tight ends or for wide receivers.
Yep.
So that'll free up some looks, and I think that's probably really the key for getting him going, because he's seen shadow coverage from Joe Hayden in the past, and he hasn't really done that well, basically. So maybe I don't think Hayden's been playing quite as well this year. I was going to look up to see.
No, he hasn't. I think if I'm not mistaken, he was out last week. So I don't know what's going on with Joe Hayden.
Yeah, he didn't play last week. I'm not sure if he's going to play this week, but I think that's been a big factor. I think for some, Hayden just seems to match up well against Green. So if he is out, again, who knows? Maybe.
Yeah, if Joe Hayden's out, I'm playing AJ Green. Like that's the thing. Like if Hayden plays, I don't know if you're sitting AJ Green at all. I'm not saying you do that, but I would probably play him in DFS.
Yeah, I guess Hayden's out. Yeah, it says Hayden's out. So we saw Matt Schaub. Of course, he had his. He has to have a pick six, right? So he had the pick six. But other than that, he wasn't that horrible. I mean, he threw another pick, but they moved the ball down the field. So I can see AJ Green having a good day. You never know when it might be a Marvin Jones day though. So who really knows? But getting Eifert out of there really helps boost the outlook for AJ Green. I'm just assuming that's going to happen. Eifert's not going to play. He's still not practicing.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. And AJ Green gets a bump, and if Hayden's out, it's all lining up for him to do well. And it's on the road too. It's on the road, so we know AJ Green, he gets his on the road.
Yeah, I'm really upset about Eifert not being. I mean, I have Gronk Eifert leagues, and it's just like, what the hell?
I know. We talked about that earlier, and you're like, I don't even know which one to play.
Now looking at Vance McDonald.
Oh man, sorry about that. Luke Wilson might be a decent play.
I hadn't even thought about Luke Wilson. That's a good the double L Wilson.
Double L Wilson, yes. But going on to the next game, the 49ers at the Bears. Now, Kevin, I'm excited. I'm sure you're excited. Alshon Jeffrey's going to have the game of his life, isn't he?
Well, okay. So here's the thing about the Bears that I've noticed. Now, we talked about game script earlier. If you look at throughout the entire season, teams that are passing more or less than expected, John Fox, now that he's outside of Peyton Manning, and they have Gase there and everything, and they're outside of Peyton Manning, they're actually running the ball much more than you would expect. If you look on the season, it's kind of amazing. They are the most run-happy team in the league, if you can believe that. They've actually been running it much more than you would expect based upon the fact that they've been trailing in a lot of games. So my only concern is they get up big and you don't see a lot of targets. But Alshon is just so dominant as far as his target share is concerned, and hopefully he can get some touchdowns. He had a fade that he almost caught in the end zone, so they use him around the goal line. But I think he's pretty safe. But my only concern would be they get a huge lead and they just grind it out.
Well, I was concerned about that too, but then I looked at it, and the 49ers have not allowed an opposing team under 15 points to receivers alone since week 1. Okay. Now, obviously, when you look at 15 points, that's a pretty good fantasy day. Yeah. I think Alshon Jeffrey is going to make up at least 80% of the Bears' points. I mean, for wide receivers, anyways.
Yeah. I mean, I love Alshon. Don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to think. I'm trying to prepare myself mentally for a letdown. That's it.
But the thing is, I really wouldn't. It's a Bears. It's a home game. They're off a big layoff. They played on Thanksgiving. He's healthy.
Well, I'm starting Cutler. I feel better about Cutler in some ways, just because I think they're gonna. Hopefully he won't, throw like 4 interceptions or something. But
no.
But I'm starting Cutler, which is my best team, and the best team that I have has had Phillip Rivers, who I started last week. Thank God he finally came back around. But I'm actually starting Cutler over him this week. With I need to secure the number 1 spot in that league. So I'm really hoping for good things from Smoke and Jay.
I would actually be more concerned about Cutler, with the game script, than Jeffrey, because I could see Cutler throwing for 200 and a touchdown, and Jeffrey getting like 120 and a touchdown.
Would you start Phillip Rivers against the Broncos?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right,
no, I stick with Cutler there.
Yeah.
It's at least safer. Antonio Brown, listen to this. Antonio Brown, 195 yards and a touchdown. Larry Fitzgerald, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns. Odell Beckham, 121 yards and a touchdown. Steve Smith, 137 yards and a touchdown. Julio Jones 137 yards. He didn't score, but I think you're getting the drift there. Like San Francisco has been blown.
Okay, you've convinced me. Alshon Jeffrey's number 1 wide
DFS,
receiver this week.
DFS. No, I think he's number 2. I think he's number 2, right behind Antonio Brown. That's my take on it.
Okay, all right. Well, I got him in like half of my league, so I hope
that's awesome.
I hope it's true.
I'm 100% on your bandwagon there.
Okay.
I love Matt Forte this week too. I think that there's enough to go around this week with the Bears. I think they're trying to incorporate him back, considering they're trying to make a playoff run. They should win. And I like Forte as a back end one. I know people are still on the Langford, deal. But I think he falls back into, if he doesn't score, he's not productive. I think that's what Langford's going to be going forward.
Yeah.
It's like that Carlos Williams. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, the problem is Forte, you can use him in the passing game. I mean, what you could hope for someone in Langford's situation is you get this kind of Gio Bernard-ish sort of role that you could carve out. But Forte is a great receiving back, so it makes it a little bit more difficult for him to get consistent production.
Yep, and he's worked with Jay in the passing game for a long time. So I like Forte. Langford is more of a – I think he's more of a flex if needed. I mean, I think that the game script could go where he can get 10 carries, which is fine. Out of a running back in a flex spot. That's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But moving on, the Jaguars at the Titans. This is another rematch of a game we saw back on Thursday night a few weeks ago, where Blake Bortles didn't really look himself, or maybe he did, but Allen Robinson was still able to make it work. Allen Hurns is not going to play this week. How high are you on Allen Robinson this week? And like a DFS setting, are you going to play him like everywhere?
Yeah, I think you pretty much have to. I mean, the Titans are not a formidable defense. They should be able to put up some points. I mean, he loves Allen Robinson. Maybe Marquise Lee can do something. I don't know. He was drafted in front of Robinson a couple of years ago.
Uh-huh.
He wasn't a very athletic prospect, but he put up good college numbers. So who knows what's going to happen there? I guess the only, Julius Thomas is starting to suck up some red zone targets and some looks there, so that's a little bit of a concern. But I think that Robinson just gives you a good floor because he's Bortles' go-to guy.
Yeah, a little. The concern I have about the Jags this week is not Allen Robinson, it's TJ Yeldon. What the heck were they doing last week? 8 carries against the Chargers? Like,
they were getting smoked. So I mean, Phillip Rivers was throwing the ball all over the place, so that affected things obviously.
Yeah, and part of it had to do with Bortles, like the decision making he had last week. Like I don't know what he was doing, like if he just was out of it, because there were 2 times they were inside the 10-yard line, and then he scrambles and goes over the line of scrimmage and then tosses the ball forward. He did like a Brett Favre, like that little.
Yeah.
And he did it twice, and he looked back like, oh, that was a penalty. Like, do you not know where the line of scrimmage is? That's like your job. I don't know what happened with him last week. I really don't.
Well, Bortles is going to Bortles.
What do you think about Mariota this week? Are you going to play him like ahead of somebody like maybe like a Phillip Rivers?
Yes, I would play him ahead of Phillip Rivers. I mean, he's a favorite. He's at home. Phillip Rivers just put up 4 touchdowns last week against the Jaguars. Maybe he can even get a rushing score in there or something. That would be nice. Their over/under is for the team is 23 points. This is probably as good of a matchup as you're. I mean, this is not the greatest matchup for Mariota, but if you're not starting him this week, then you're probably not starting him many weeks at all.
And you might as well drop him then, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But that game, we know what that game entails. You guys have seen that game before. The Seahawks at the Vikings. Obviously, last week the Seahawks. It was fantastic to watch that game. It was one of those games where it's like the NFL this year, there's been a lot of crap-tastic games. Let's just be honest. That was a game that was so fun to watch. Like, that was a game that reminds you why you love the NFL. Was it not?
Yeah, well, I mean, the Marcus Wheaton fans were loving it.
Oh, God. I've gotten questions.
I made a joke on Twitter. Has there been any buy Marcus Wheaton article? Because I've seen like 17 sell Marcus Wheaton articles. So I feel like I should just put something out there just to be contrarian.
Maybe.
If Martavis Bryant and Antonio Brown both get mono or something? Maybe there's a chance for him.
Then maybe I'd play him as a wide receiver 3. Maybe.
Okay.
But obviously Marcus Wheaton, whatever. But the Seahawks, their offense is looking more formidable. Obviously losing Jimmy Graham hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're going against the Vikings this week. The Vikings have only allowed 1 team over 23 points. That still stands. So their defense is playing extremely well. So I'm warning people not to play Doug Baldwin expecting results like he's done in 2 of the last 3 weeks. The only 2 games where he's gone off this year were against the Steelers, and then I think it was the Packers. So it was 2 games where Seattle actually had to score and like throw the ball. It was against high-scoring offenses. The rest of the year, the Seahawks don't really have a game where they're going to have to throw the ball a bunch. Minnesota is not going to put them in the situation. Are you with me? Are you not recommending anybody play Doug Baldwin?
Yeah. No, you should never be starting Doug Baldwin unless you're in like a 32-team league or something. There's got to be somebody else out there that you can count on. I mean, Baldwin's getting a good share of targets over the last few weeks, but it still barely amounts to any targets because they just don't throw the ball. So I don't expect them to throw it necessarily a whole lot this game either.
Yep, and Luke Wilson's probably a better blocking tight end than Jimmy Graham, right?
Anyone's a better blocking tight end than Jimmy Graham.
I'm pretty sure you're correct. What about the Vikings and Stephon Diggs? What's going on with him? He's been a disappointment, to say the least. I wasn't as high as him I wasn't high on him as everybody else was, but man, I didn't expect it to be this far of a dip.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing happening is, first of all, Minnesota's one of those teams that's been very run happy. I mean, but they've also been winning. So they're a team, when they win, they just feed Adrian Peterson, and that's it. So Diggs is not seeing a lot of targets. I mean, Mike Wallace is really – I mean, he's literally doing nothing. Like, I don't know if he's even out there. So he's not doing anything. So and then there's not passing the ball at all. So you combine that with the fact that – is he going to face shadow coverage from Richard Sherman? I don't know. I mean, Mike Wallace is a bigger name. They've been using Sherman in shadow. If he's shadowed by Richard Sherman, then forget about it. If he's not, then maybe there's a chance he could do something because Minnesota might actually need to score in this game.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to shadow him. I know that they've done it with like legit number ones. I don't think they're going to view Diggs as a legit number one. I don't.
Mike Wallace is
he is dead. But Kerry Williams, like I don't know. Are they going to leave Kerry Williams on Mike Wallace?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was just saying you could do safety. You could do like a safety help on Mike Wallace, and then just whatever. I think Cam Chancellor's too busy killing people than to help out in deep. Man, that guy can lay out some hits. But on from that game, the Jets at the Giants. Looking at this game, there's really not anybody that's borderline. It's like, you're going to play Marshall, you're going to play Decker, you're going to play Odell Beckham, which, by the way, it appears that Darrelle Revis, so I take it back, Alshon Jeffrey's the 3rd best wide receiver play. Odell Beckham against the Jets without Revis. Yeah. This is going to get really, really ugly really fast. Did you see that is, I forget his New York, it must probably New York Post because it was
Manish Mehta, right?
Yeah, that's so ridiculous. I mean, come on, man.
I think
let's not get crazy here. I read another article. Someone was saying that Fournette was going to break the NFL rushing record of all time, and I'm like, where do these guys get these takes?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of like those people that saying that Todd Gurley's the best running back in the NFL after 2 games. We know where we're at with that. I'm not saying that Gurley's he's garbage, but I'm just saying that don't be too quick to judge. It's easy to jump on Revis after DeAndre Hopkins burned him. It's really easy.
Yeah.
But before that game, Revis had been Revis. Like, let's just be honest here. He'd been really, really, really good. To say that he's done and Odell Beckham would whoop him around the field, I don't think that's fair. I mean, not to say that Beckham couldn't get his, because I still think he could. But to say
I think Beckham would get his, but he's not going to get 350 receiving yards.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's what he said. He's going to break the record. Yeah,
he's going to break Flipper Anderson's record. I mean, come on, man.
I agree. That should be on the Come On Man segment. But like I said, we don't need to touch on that. I don't think you should be playing any of the Giants running backs because they're just too very inconsistent.
They have like 5, so yeah.
They just keep adding to the stable. But Chris Ivory, you'll play. But yeah. All right. Cardinals at Rams. This game has a question that everybody's dying to know. David Johnson, who is somebody that's in his territory, like that you were going to play him over? Like, I've had a few questions, and this is one where I've had actual trouble deciding. Eddie Lacy tonight or David Johnson?
I would really want to play David Johnson. I mean, there's risk, but I think I would rather have David Johnson. I've leaned Lacy. I just believe that the Packers know to win games what they've done in the past. They run the ball well, and it sets up Rodgers to throw the ball where he needs to. And I think Lacy being off the injury report, he looked really good last week. I know he's Fat Eddie. He's been running around, and everybody's been questioning him, and myself included, but he looked really good last week. And against the Lions, a team that, I mean, if the Lions were if the Lions defense was the Lions defense of 5 weeks ago, then I would agree.
Yeah.
And just with Rodgers not playing that well, I don't know. It's just tougher. Chris, not Chris is dead. David Johnson, he could. I really love this kid. He can do everything. So I don't know. I'm probably too high on David Johnson this week, though. Just keep that in mind.
Well, I think he's an RB2. I think he's a strong RB2. For the strict reason that the Rams, they're not going to blow anybody out. They're not going to do anything like that. They're going to allow him to get a ton of carries. Like, I think it'd be odd if we didn't see David Johnson get 20 touches in this game. That's the reason why it's hard not to love him. Now, as a runner, like an in-between the tackles runner, I don't necessarily like him very much. He's really good out of the passing game.
Touchdowns.
Yeah, he's like a Matt Forte out of the passing game. He's huge. Like, he looks like a wide receiver.
He's done well on the goal line, though. Like, he's converted a lot on the goal line. He's a big dude. I agree. That was his knock coming out of he's bounced. He's a bouncer. He bounces everything outside. But I mean, the guy's got like 4 or 5 wheels at four something wheels. So, bounce away if you can do it.
Yeah, we have him graded out as a negative in the running game, as a negative 1.6 in regards to the rating system. And the weird part is I know it's weird, but the Rams we have graded as the #1 run defense. So that when I saw that, I was kind of did a double take where I'm like, they haven't been really good, but a lot of it has really been volume driven. And their offense.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely true. Although I wonder what the split would be if you took the last few weeks versus the entire season. But I agree.
Yes, I looked at it, and the carries are out of control.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's tough when you're put in a spot like that. Yeah. But on the other
Gurley
side,
got crushed by game script last week too. So that was the big concern for him coming into the season. We saw it rear its ugly head recently.
It was the concern, and I know a lot of people. Do you remember the first game Gurley played? He had 6 carries for 9 yards.
Yeah,
it was a simple.
But, there was the ACL thing there.
I understand, but it was still a similar game script where the thing is,
he's not a floor guy. He's just not in that offense. I mean, they still throw the ball to Benny Cunningham. That offense is just garbage. I mean, the offense is not even any better with Todd Gurley than without Todd Gurley from a points perspective. They were just riding him in some decent games. So I mean, you're still playing Gurley. I doubt you have a better option, but just be prepared because the ceiling is so high. But just be prepared, that he could put up another stinker.
Now here's the question for you: who would you play, David Johnson or Todd Gurley?
Play David Johnson.
See, that's what I'm saying. It's like
I love David Johnson.
People might have, let's say they picked up D'Angelo Williams and David Johnson off the waiver wire.
Williams out there. I watched Kerwin Williams out. I know it's going to happen. Arians I don't know. Okay, whatever. I'm not going to talk about it too much. I love David Johnson though.
I don't think I would disagree with it. All right, guys. So obviously there's some teams out there that may have missed the playoffs, but fortunately for us, we have 1 week fantasy at DraftKings.com with millions being won each and every week. Every play in every game could take you closer to a life-changing payday. This isn't fantasy as usual. This is DraftKings. Welcome to the big time. Hurry to DraftKings.com now and use promo code PFF to play for free with your first deposit in this Sunday's $1 million fantasy football contest. First place takes home $100,000. Enter PFF for free entry now at DraftKings.com. That's DraftKings.com. Now, Kevin, have you had a chance to watch that sweat show now that I talked about the DraftKings one that they have with the millionaire maker?
I haven't watched any Granny sweating.
No. Well, they had her on again. They did have her on again. But the kid that won the $1 million, he's a college student. He won the $1 million this past week. They had him on.
That should help pay for half of his student loans.
Half of them. Yeah, 100%. He was living in a frat house, and he didn't want to wake up all the neighbors. But
rager. I'm sure there was a rager going on there.
You have Sunday to imagine.
Night. Oh, no, actually, wait. It closes on Monday, right? Monday night. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting. That just goes to show like anybody can win this $1 million if you know.
It goes to show that school is just stupid. Just play. That's what it goes to show.
Can we take an outtake and put that at the beginning of the show? I think that's a teaser. All right. So moving on to the next game, the Falcons at the Buccaneers. The Falcons have been awful. There's no other way to put it. After winning their first 5 games, they've lost 5 out of 6, and now they're heading to Tampa Bay in a must-win game, I guess. I mean, they're going to be out of the playoff race before they know it if they don't start winning games. I don't know if this is a game where they can win, but Matt Ryan, do you have any inkling as to what's going on with him? Like, what's made him so bad recently?
I don't know. That is a very good question because they had an extremely soft schedule this year. I mean, that's the kind of thing where you look at what Cam Newton's been doing. I mean, they've had an extremely soft schedule, but then what's going on with Matt Ryan? I mean, maybe it just is that there's no one to throw the ball to other than Julio Jones. I mean, he has one of the best receivers in the league, Julio Jones. But then why are they throwing the ball to Roddy White so many times? So ridiculous. They said they were scripting. You don't script who you're going to throw the ball to. They have to get open, and then you throw the ball to him. I don't know. It just seems ridiculous. Hankerson, he's proving why he's just not, he's not great, obviously. Tammy has been okay, but that's only because they have no one else to go to. So it'll help to get Freeman back in the game just because of his work in the receiving game. I am interested to see if they integrate Coleman a bit more because I think they like Coleman. I mean, I know he hasn't played well, but he was kind of the pick of the current, coaching regime, you could say. He wasn't bad. I mean, he's averaging 4.4 yards a carry on the season versus 4.6 for Freeman. So we'll see how that split works out. I think for Ryan, it's just he doesn't have anyone to throw the ball to basically, other than Julio Jones, and you can only throw it to one receiver so much. I mean, Odell Beckham was so awesome at the end of last year, but they weren't winning games.
Right.
They were losing games, so it's tough if you only have one guy to throw to.
No, it is, and I know some people said, poor Matt Ryan. Oh, he only has Julio Jones, and I understand that. Matt
didn't
Ryan
say about Andy Dalton when he only had AJ Green, I guess, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, well, the thing is, then they added options, or Tyler Eifert got healthy. But regardless, I mean, we know we're starting Devonta Freeman. We know we're starting Julio Jones. Matt Ryan was the guy that I was teetering on. I just don't know.
I mean, there's so many great quarterback options this year.
Mm-hmm.
And Tampa, they're either awful or not bad. So you got to hope you catch them on one of those awful days.
Yeah, I've had a few people ask me about Eli Manning or Matt Ryan this week. And, with Revis out, I'm sticking with Eli.
Yeah, Eli, like I mentioned, Eli's going to Eli sometime too, but he could also Eli in a good direction. So we'll see.
Yeah. Vincent Jackson, is he playable?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think he's getting enough targets to be playable. I think they it should be a close enough game where I don't think they're going to abandon the pass. So I think he's playable. I mean, he's somebody I would tag in there if you don't have a better option. I mean, I'd play him over quite a few guys probably.
Yeah. Now moving on to the next game, the Broncos at the Chargers. The Broncos are, highly probable to win this game. I just want to see what happens with Phillip Rivers if he makes it through this game alive, considering his offensive line, how they've looked, and with the Broncos, the way they get at the passer. He's lacking options. Chris Harris is going to take out Stevie Johnson. The outside corners, I mean, Inman and Malcolm Floyd, they're going to have their hands full. I think Gates is a solid play in this game. Every week.
Gates is a great play.
Yeah, I think that's who.
Unless he's on the injury report again. I don't know if he made it through last week without something popping up. But I think as long as he's not injured, he's the focal point of the passing offense.
He really is. I'd build my team around it. I'd be like, okay, well, if you're a defense, I'd plan around that. I'd be like, we're gonna make sure we bracket Antonio Gates, and if Inman beats us, he beats us. Good luck with that. But I think that Danny Woodhead is a fantastic start. I know he's been awful lately. I really do. I know I talked about it, that I said I think Danny Woodhead has had just one game over 10 rushing yards in his last 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. But he is the number 13 running back on the season. Like it's in standard formats too. So
that just shows you how awful running backs are.
It really does. It really does. And I think this week is one.
Running backs are like are kind of like pick and choose. Like you need to find those guys off of the waiver wire and other stuff that have blow up games. But your Langford types aren't showing up in the top 15 running backs, but they're giving you those performances, but you just have to choose the right weeks.
Yeah, if anything, this year has worked out for like the whole zero RB.
I'm all about the zero RB life.
Yeah, the thing is this season is really playing out for those guys very well. Now
Thomas Rawls in the playoffs.
There you go, and D'Angelo Williams, right?
I had D'Angelo Williams on a ton of teams to start off the season, but then the bye weeks came and I dropped him a bunch of places. So I don't even want. Okay, it's just painful to talk about.
It's kind of like me and Jordan.
I had Deion Lewis in like 80% of my team, so that's another painful loss.
Yeah, that's rough. But yeah, I mean, you got him for free, so you can't be that mad.
Right. I still have Rawls. I got Buck Allen. I got Sean Drawn, if you believe Drone. PPR.
I don't know.
He's not bad.
There you go. Chiefs at the Raiders. Charkandrick West is back. He's gonna play.
What's going to happen there, though? Like, you talk about who knows what's going to happen, though. Are they going to Are they going to put West back in the saddle and ride him, or is Ware gonna be in there a lot?
I think they put him back in the saddle. I think Andy Reid likes a workhorse. He sticks with him. He's never worked a timeshare, and I don't think
tell us. That's all I want to know. I want some indication of what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it's going to be West. I think it's like at best for Ware. I think it's an 80-20 split. I just don't see it happening much. Jeremy Maclin. Okay, this guy. He averaged like 4.5 targets over the last 4 weeks. And then against the Bills, I ranked him down like as a wide receiver 4, like don't play him, stay far, far away. And then against the Bills, he goes off for 160 yards and a touchdown. Now he plays the Raiders. You got to play him, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy you got to play unless you have a better option. But I mean, wide receivers just, generally are kind of high variance guys, and then when Alex Smith is your quarterback, then you're even a higher variance because you don't know if he's going to throw the ball or not. I mean, Buffalo got a lead in that game last week, which forced Alex Smith to throw the ball down the field. So you just got to hope something like that happens again. Yeah.
Now, and then on the Raiders side, Latavius Murray, the guy. I mean, I don't know what happened, but he's fallen off, and it hasn't been very pretty. This week he gets Kansas City. Kansas City is not a good place for a running back to go or to play. And then he gets Denver next week and Green Bay and San Diego.
Yeah.
So, I mean, San Diego is obviously fantastic if you could make it to your fantasy Super Bowl with him. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Are you benching him this week for somebody like a CJ Anderson?
Yes. I would bench him for CJ Anderson. I mean, I'm under the hopeful assumption that CJ Anderson is going to start to take over that backfield. I mean, I like Hillman. I think he's great, but I think he's a change of pace guy.
Yeah, I agree. And I actually own CJ Anderson and Ronnie Hillman in a dynasty, and I traded away Hillman because his value was higher. Mm-hmm. And just so happens that CJ Anderson's worked out extremely, extremely well over the last few weeks. He's averaging actually, I think it's over 6 yards per carry since their bye week, or 5 yards per carry. I can't remember, but he leads the NFL since that time, since their bye week. He's running great. That run that he had on the edge last week. Mm-hmm. So impressive. He
looks great. He's the type of guy where if you happen to have him on your roster and you survived and you made it to the playoffs, he could be a league winner down the stretch.
That's true. And with Osweiler, I mean, he's competent enough. I mean, and with the way
they're just actually running the scheme now, so I think that's helping.
They are. I don't know if Peyton Manning comes back. I don't know if they.
He can't come back, right? They can't bring him back.
I mean, as a coach. I mean, I know you're in a weird spot because it's Peyton friggin' Manning, but at the same time, you're there to win a championship, and that's, I mean, with Osweiler,
when you have that injury excuse, they can just milk that. They can be like, oh, his foot, the other is plantar or whatever, still hurts.
The thing is, I've had plantar fasciitis, and it does not go away like over a week. It doesn't go away. Like that's just the brutal honesty. It's like, and yes, they can milk this out.
Well, they talked about him being in a cast, and now he's in a walking boot. And I'm like, I don't know. I feel like they're already playing this up so much.
Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden he's on his deathbed, and they have to resuscitate him or something, Like they're already laying the ground for him to be out a minimum of a couple more weeks. Yeah. So once we're into that sort of range, as long as Osweiler is playing well, and it's not like they have a very extremely difficult schedule, and they're going into the playoffs, I don't understand how you can make the switch at that point. And they beat the Patriots.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can make the switch.
They did. They beat the Patriots, and it was a shocker. But Osweiler, he's the guy going forward. He's got to be.
I don't necessarily think he's good, by the way. I'm just saying that I don't think they can make it. I don't think he's great, but he's
right. He's a game manager. He's done well. I mean, he's done well as a game manager. That's what he's asked to do, and he's doing his part. Peyton Manning was
that team was built to win a championship with a competent quarterback. It's just Peyton Manning. It doesn't even reach that bar this year.
No, it's unfortunate he doesn't, but he really doesn't. But the next team is trying to make a Super Bowl run. They're still the only undefeated team left. The Panthers at the Saints. The Saints have been pretty awful. That continued last week. They didn't even score an offensive touchdown. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I didn't watch that game. That was kind of surprising to me because it was in a dome, but I guess Houston's defense is playing that much better. I don't know what's going on with the Saints.
And coming off of a bye week, that was the more frustrating part for me is like, okay, the Saints, you guys had an entire extra week to plan for this game, and you came out and scored 6 points. That's a joke. I know Drew Brees is a different guy at home, and they're going to be at home for this game. Now, I guess a question I'd ask is if you have Brandon Cooks and you have Brandon LaFell, who would you play of those two options?
LaFell.
I would too. I think Cooks is more of a wide receiver 3. I think he's going to see, a decent amount of Josh Norman. I don't know if do you know if Mike Mike Clay, his shadow report, did he say that he expects Norman to shadow Cooks?
I don't know. I mean, Norman doesn't really go into the slot that much, though. I
Yeah.
don't know. So maybe they'll have Cooks there. I mean, I expect. I mean, Drew Brees has been throwing it to, he throws it all over the place. So he'll. I don't know about Cooks. Cooks is kind of a very iffy play for me.
And what about Mark Ingram? Man.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ingram. I mean, he's being used in the passing game. So C.J. Spiller is. They signed him for some reason this offseason. I'm not sure why, because they don't play him. So what? Yeah, I like it. They should be able to score some points, hopefully.
The concern is that he's only received 21 touches over the last 2 weeks. That's the part that surprises me. I don't know what's going on there, of why all of a sudden that they're not giving Ingram the touches. Whereas it seemed, I think 80% of the games he had like 18 touches or more.
They gave up 2 weeks ago. I mean, before the bye, like that Washington Redskins game. I mean, they were trailing at the end. They literally ran Hightower, not Ingram,
Right.
like 10 straight times to end the game. They weren't even trying to score at all. So I think that's a little bit of an anomaly, hopefully.
And on a side note, why the heck did the Saints sign CJ Spiller?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't really know. I don't think C.J. Spiller has looked great.
No, I don't either.
But you probably want to at least mix him in a little bit. He did have that one long touchdown against the Cowboys, so at least he gives you some big play threat. I think the problem is you're not giving yourself much of a chance for the big play threat if he's only touching the ball 3 times a game.
Right. Well, that's true. He obviously had the one big play this year. It was that 80-yard touchdown that won the game. That was a long time ago, but The Panthers, we know who we're starting there. You're starting Cam Newton. You're starting Jonathan Stewart. I don't know if you could really trust any of the receivers, but I mean, against the Saints, if you're looking for a desperation option, Devin Funchess, you could throw him in there at wide receiver with the snaps he's seeing, and hope for results against the Saints.
Hope for a touchdown.
Yeah, that's all you can really hope for. But next game, this is an interesting one. I don't know if the Eagles have announced whether or not Sam Bradford's going to start or not. I know he said he's been cleared to play and he expects to play, but I don't know what that means. I don't know if they're benching Sanchez now or if they're rolling with him. But my take would be that they're going to play Bradford with how bad the Eagles offense is.
I think they're going to play Bradford.
And Ryan Matthews, I don't know if he's been cleared, which is really upsetting because I wanted to see him steal DeMarco Murray's job because DeMarco Murray has been, by all accounts, awful. Yeah. There hasn't been very many running backs in the league that have been worse this year, not just by the naked eye, but by all measurables, by all statistics, by our grading team. Murray's been awful. And I will
say it's always tough with running backs sometimes because there's a lot of scheme, there's a lot of other things going on. So I don't know if he's just become a bad player, but I mean, that whole offense is kind of dysfunctional, and definitely Ryan Matthews has played better. So I don't see them being I don't see the talent. I never saw the talent gap as being even that significant in the offseason. So is Matthews going to play for sure this week?
I don't think so. That's the bad part is I'm worried about it because supposedly he was able to beat
3 weeks. This is 3 weeks he's been out or something.
Yes, right? Yes, yeah. He's missed the 2 last full games and half the other one. So I thought he was for sure going to be back this week. And supposedly he was at practice, but he wasn't practicing. So I don't know if you know, obviously, let me know. But
well, maybe Sproles. You might be able to throw Sproles in there. I mean, they're going to get killed. So I think Sproles is startable. I mean, he's not a PPR if Matthews or Murray are missing. So you fire up your Darren Sproles desperation PPR play.
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about Jordan Matthews. I know that they're going to get
bad. That's the only way you really can feel.
Well, right, but I mean, I guess there's going to be garbage time production, though, right?
He's totally unreliable, even in garbage time. I feel like he has. I mean, I mean, obviously it helps to have garbage time, but man, it's been rough without a deep threat over the top to help clear out some space for him underneath, man. And with no Macklin, no Deshaun Jackson. I don't know if you saw, I did an article about how Deshaun Jackson's really great. They're really missing somebody, man.
They are. They're missing someone to stretch the field. I know Aguilar was supposed to be that guy, but he's been a major disappointment. But now this game, and you're right about Matthews. I'm in my dynasty league. I'm deciding between him and John Brown as my number 3 receiver. Brown's playing against the Rams, so I'm just trying to.
I'd go Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Is this interesting that Brown's not getting targeted that much since he's come back from injury, though? But I'd still go Brown.
Yeah. But the Patriots going against the Eagles. Now, the Eagles have somehow allowed 15 passing touchdowns in the last 4 games.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there.
And 10 in the last 2 weeks to Matt Stafford and Jameis Winston. So even though Tom Brady doesn't have a soul to pass to,
yeah,
you still got to like him though, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, their total is, I think, the highest of the week at 28.5, 29 points. That's a lot of points. And they're still throwing the ball a lot. It's not like since Deion Lewis left, they stopped throwing the ball. They just stopped throwing the ball to their running backs.
Right.
They've still been throwing it a ton. I'm not huge on these narrative sort of things, but if there ever was a team that looks like it's quit on its head coach, it's kind of the Eagles. And Chip Kelly's kind of if you're going to quit on somebody, Chip Kelly's probably a good guy to quit on, since I think a lot of the players feel like they're just mercenaries underneath Chip Kelly.
Yeah, I don't know if he makes it through this offseason. They've trended down.
Because he obviously should not be the GM, but can you strip him of the GM job and still keep him at the same time? I think it's tough for someone to take a very public, motion like that.
No, I don't think that they could do that, just because I think once you've given him that control, you can't take it. You can't take it away. And he's dismantled this team.
I mean, they released Deshaun Jackson. I mean, that guy, he's whatever. He's a cancer in the locker room, I guess, but he runs really fast.
Right, but LaShawn McCoy, getting rid of him for Kiko Alonso, coming off amazing.
I don't know if I hit. I didn't like the DeMarco Murray signing, but they could have just signed Ryan Matthews, right?
Right. I thought that's what they were doing, and I thought it was a perfect fit.
Well, they wanted Gore, and then Gore,
reneged on the deal.
Yeah, he backed out.
Yeah, but obviously the Patriots, you're playing Tom Brady, but Brandon LaFell, as I think both you and I can agree, Kevin, that Brandon LaFell's an excellent play this week. Yeah. But Scott Chandler, me personally, I would play Scott Chandler over someone like Julius Thomas. Are you with me on that, or are you not going quite that far?
I would probably still go Thomas. I mean, tight ends are always difficult because I feel like we overestimate scheme when it comes to tight ends, because we'll say, oh, well, Gronk is gone and Chandler's decent, so they'll throw the ball to him a lot. I mean, they have been throwing it to him, so I think that's kind of a coin toss. But I don't expect great things from Chandler. If you have another good tight end option, don't expect Gronk light production, but expect in your teens sort of tight end sort of range is where I would put him.
Well, that's the thing. I did more Scott Chandler research this week than I care to admit. But over the last 3 years, he's finished in the top 20 tight ends, and that was with Thaddeus Lewis, Kyle Orton throwing the ball. So EJ Manuel was part of it. So I think he's competent. I'm not saying he's going to put up Gronk numbers, but I think the matchup is what makes me love him so much. And the fact that Amendola, who knows how healthy he is, we like LaFell, but there's just only so many people that he could pass to, and they have their tight ends in New England line up like a receiver most of the time. So
yeah, he seems to like him, and there's always a chance for a touchdown too.
Of course.
What'll happen is like that whoever their third tight end is will get a touchdown, I bet.
Who is their third tight end?
I don't even know. They had that guy, that Huamadui guy, that he went to New Orleans, right? I'm not even sure who they have there.
Well, Kevin, you're talking about the streaming options without Gronk and Tyler Eifert. There you go. Look for that number. Look for the last tight end on the Patriots.
Yeah, God. Wait, who did you tell me about earlier? I already forgot. When I said Vance McDonald, you had
Luke Wilson.
Right? Oh, Luke Wilson. Okay, I got to remember that. I can't believe I got Luke Wilson.
Yeah, that's kind of funny.
So disgusting.
The Colts at the Steelers. The Steelers is going to be an offensive juggernaut in this game. I really, truly believe that, and I'm going to put all my faith in them. I'm doing my Yahoo article. I was writing it last night, actually. I started writing it, and considering Roethlisberger was back at practice, I have 3 Steelers in that lineup, and it's a tournament lineup. I believe that much in the Steelers offense this week. Yeah. I don't think that there's anybody you're sitting outside of Marcus Wheaton, of course.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with Frank Gore as a Colts fan, or not fan, a Colts owner, like a Frank Gore owner?
Well, I mean, it's probably. I mean, they talk about he's beat up, but everyone's beat up in the NFL, so I don't know if that's that big of a concern. I mean, it's got to be good for him that Bradshaw is gone. Not that Bradshaw was getting a ton of volume, but Bradshaw was getting some cheap touchdowns, at least passing touchdowns. So I know they brought in, the Daniel Boom Heron, and they have Zerlon Tipton. That's not a joke. That's a real guy that they have. And so, but you figure Gore, they still have to lean on Gore in that situation, right?
They do, but my question is how much can they really run the ball if Pittsburgh's
Yeah, well, maybe they'll throw it to him at least. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Hasselbeck hasn't thrown it
Pittsburgh's defense is playing better, but they can get into a shootout.
Yeah. I look forward to that game. Actually, it's a Sunday night game I'm looking forward to just because
I Dante Moncrief this week.
Moncrief, I mean, I actually think that
would you start him over, like Watkins?
I wouldn't go that far. I don't know. I just don't think that Hasselbeck offers that upside that I'd want out of a receiver.
Yeah,
I don't think he doesn't have the arm to get it downfield. So you're going to see Moncrief playing that possession receiver type role, and then you're going to be looking at T.Y. Hilton to like kind of stretch the field, which he did last week. So
yeah.
I'd probably stick with someone like Watkins in that type situation.
Yeah, I think I would too. But I'm just checking because Moncrief's a guy that I still have in a few leagues, and this week I'm thinking like, well, it's maybe, I
don't think it's a bad idea. I mean, I don't think that I could see a line of like 7 catches, 80 yards. I mean, with a shot at a touchdown. I don't think it's out of the possibility.
5 touchdowns last week against Pittsburgh, so that's at least somewhat encouraging.
It is, and I mean, he's looked better, obviously, Russell Wilson. But going on to the Monday night game, man, Tony Romo comes back and he dies. And Dez Bryant dies as well. Now,
did Tony Romo look fat to you? Like, I saw some pictures of him. I'm not joking. I saw some pictures of him when he was standing on the sideline. I was like, this guy looks like he's totally out of shape.
He's getting older, and I don't know.
He's got that contract. He's got that wife and kid.
He's married now. Yeah, he's
nailing it in, man.
Yeah, he needs to get back on the golf course and walk the 18.
I think so.
But man, Dez Bryant, he's someone that, as an owner, you should be very, very, very concerned about. And the reason I say that
is that your team is probably dead anyway.
Well, they're dead. And did you hear the whole thing about Jerry Jones? They're not putting Tony Romo on the IR because of their chance to make the playoffs.
I mean, it could happen, I guess.
No,
right?
It can't. No, it can't. But basically,
this week's okay. Like, I looked at Dez, I was like, I could throw Dez out there this week.
Oh yeah, I like Dez this week. Now that's where I was going with this. Is that
I thought he looked okay against Norman. They missed him a couple of times, and then it's kind of all hope was lost at a certain point in that game.
I just don't know how teams don't game plan and say, hey, Josh Norman, he doesn't go into the slot. Why don't we slide our number 1 receiver in there? I'm really hoping that
put Bees
on the bench where he belongs.
No, you gotta have. First of all, Beasley and Burson. I was glad we got to see them on the field at the same time together, because I was certain that was just a guy double dipping and like playing it, just somehow making cross country flights and get into 2 games.
My God, that is too funny. But Dez this week, anyways, a lot of people have asked me if they should bench Dez Bryant, and the answer this week is no. You play him against Washington now, but my concern about Dez is going forward. They play the Jets and Buffalo in weeks 15 and 16. And that those are obviously the 2 biggest, most important weeks. Now, on a normal case, I'd be like, well, Dez, he could be salvageable, but with Matt Castle, I'm not necessarily believing it. Mm-hmm. But this week against Washington, I can believe it. Washington has allowed multiple touchdowns to wide receivers in 7 of their last 9 games. That's insane.
That is
really insane. They've allowed 17 on the year, and 2 touchdowns to a lot. Okay, they've given up a lot. And I think Matt Castle, in the 2 games that Dez played with him, he didn't necessarily play bad, right?
No, I think what Matt Castle brought that Whedon did not have was willingness to throw the ball down the field. I mean, Whedon was dumping it off. I mean, you thought that Lance Dunbar was like a superstar with when Whedon was a quarterback, because he was just dumping it off to the running back all game long. So at least Whedon will just throw it up there. So I think that throw it up there against the Washington secondary, Dez Bryant seems. I think you're looking at a high end wide receiver too this week for Dez Bryant.
Yep, I think I have him ranked as a number 13 or 14 receiver this week. So I do like Dez. I'd play him. But on the Redskins side, Deshaun Jackson, he's more of that boomer bust guy. I'd rather play somebody like Sammy Watkins over him.
I think so. I mean, I think Deshaun Jackson just brings an element that really helps the entire offense by being able to have that deep threat.
Oh yeah, just being there, Deshaun Jackson has an effect on the game. Whether or not he puts up, a huge performance, he has an effect. Teams have to account for it. In that long touchdown last week, that was a thing of beauty on the pass, and then to see him do his little trot into the end zone. I'm sorry. If I'm a defender, I'll take a penalty and I'll go over and smack him. Like that stuff annoys me.
What's worse, that or what, dapping? Cam Newton.
I don't even know what dapping is, man. Like
I don't know. I see old college coaches that look like they're 90 years old doing it. I mean, I'd do it right now, but I'd probably pull something. So I'm not. You ever thought you were going to tear your Achilles? Like I think about that a lot nowadays. Where if I wasn't a football fan, like I'm lifting something, I'm like, I don't know what could happen here.
Oh my God. On that note, we're going to call this a week before Kevin pulls something. Guys, feel free to follow us on Twitter. Kevin is at Cole_Kev. Myself, I'm at Mike Tagliere NFL. You guys can also subscribe to PFF Radio on iTunes, listen on Stitcher, Blog Talk Radio, and watch the show on YouTube and Fantasy Sports Network. Kevin, is there any parting thoughts you want to give before you get out of here and, maybe just rest up a little bit after a long show?
I just stick to sitting. Parting thoughts would be, I think there are a few different guys. We mentioned C.J. Anderson, Alshon Jeffrey in particular. I think those are two guys where if by some miracle you survived and you got into the playoffs, those are two guys that have just been laying. Jeffrey hasn't been laying eggs, but he's been gone all season long. I think those guys could vie for being overall top 5 in their category to end the season, no doubt. So I think those guys are going to win some playoffs. They have a decent schedule too.
I agree with that, and I know you've been on board all year. So thank you guys as always for tuning in. We appreciate you guys being here with us. We only got 3 weeks left. This is kind of crazy, but that's going to do it for us. So good luck in all your matchups. Hopefully you get into the playoffs. If you don't forget to play some DraftKings and put in the code PFF. But until next time, guys, lights out.